was a child, I was walking along through a large crowd of people with my father. And after walking along and chatting for a while, I looked up at the man that was beside me. I was holding his hand, and I had assumed I'd been walking along beside my father. And I remember even to this day the chill of terror that went up my spine as I saw that the man that I was walking with wasn't him. That somewhere along the line I had left my father's side and absent-mindedly been walking along the side of another man. Well, I thank God that I found my father after that. But that thought has never left me. There are many in this world today who are walking along beside some religious belief, some power, some philosophy that they believe they can depend upon. But sometime in the future, when their eyes are opened, they're going to see that they have been deceived. You see, at the end of time, there'll only be two groups of people. Those who have held the hand and walked along in the faith of the true God, and those who have been deceived by the great counterfeiter. If you look with me in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, you'll see exactly what I mean. Beginning in verse 12, the Apostle Paul is talking to the church at Corinth. He says, "But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off the occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory they may be found even as we." There were men that were entering the church claiming to be religious leaders, teachers of theology, and guides in the name of God. And Paul wanted to cut off the opportunity for these false teachers. He says in verse 13, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." Now, the word light in the Bible means truth. Here towards the end of time, Satan will be such an angel of truth that millions and millions will be following him, thinking that he's the true God. "Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers," friends, ministers of the gospel, ministers of truth, "also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works." The frightful impact of waking up when it's too late and finding that you've been following the wrong God is going to happen to millions of people. In Revelation 16, beginning in verse 13 and verse 14, we see the impact that the movement of following Lucifer ignorantly is going to have upon our world. That's Revelation chapter 16, verse 13 and 14. "I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs, coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet." 3 great powers united in this world at the end of time, all the powers of the world. And through those powers, there will be something that John saw as spirits like frogs, and it's defined in the next verse. "For they are the spirits of devils, going forth to the kings of the earth," or the rulers of the world, "and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty." Today we're in the midst of this very occult or spiritualistic or Luciferian explosion that's taking the entire world in its sway. And friends, the fact that it represents here the powers that will be influenced by the Spirit as the religious institutions and secular institutions means it doesn't make any difference if you claim to be a Christian. Unless you're following the narrow line of truth, the God or the one who you call Christ in the near future could be Satan himself as an angel of light. And it behooves each one of us to understand this thing. Now, in the book of Revelation, we get the first views of the conflict brought out in Revelation chapter 12 in a vision by John on the island of Patmos in the Aegean Sea. John, assuming that his work for the Lord was over with, was an exile to that island during a period of persecution. While there, God came to him in a number of wonderful visions, and those visions were to guide and protect the church until the end of time and the coming of Christ. The one vision that covers really the longest period of time is in the heart of Revelation. It's Revelation 12. And in that vision, John sees an event that took place in heaven before the creation of this world. And we read, there was war in heaven. Michael, or the one who is godlike, and of course we know that Jesus is the express image of God, so it must be Christ that's being talked about here. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. If you look at this picture of a dragon falling from heaven, it's highly symbolic, but it represents something very significant. A dragon is made up of all the destroying elements of the most dangerous animals, with the result that the dragon is a symbol of the destroyer. The real truth of the matter is this being called Satan, the devil, was originally one of the most beautiful beings in the universe. He was created to be the covering cherub, and we can read about that in Isaiah chapter 14. It gives us an amazing description of what Satan was like, or the adversary was like, before the fall. Beginning in verse 12, we read this. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? The word Ferris means to carry, and the word Luz means light. So Lucifer was the bearer of the light, or the glory of God. O Lucifer, son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. I will sit also in the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to the sides of the pit. The description of the fall and the eventual result of Lucifer and those that follow him are given in the Word of God. And in Ezekiel, it explains even further what he looked like and the results of what will take place to those who follow him. That's in Ezekiel chapter 28. And we'll begin reading in verse 13. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and diamond. And it goes on to describe some of the most beautiful jewels. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. That means that he hovered above the throne of God, probably spreading those glorious wings out, his body covered with the most gorgeous stones. And as the light, or the luz from the glory of God, spread up through him, and he bore that, he reflected magnificent colors in all direction, one of the most glorious scenes that the angels could have beheld. And I have set thee so, thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitudes of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries by the multitudes of thy iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore will I bring fire forth from the midst of thee. It shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. Satan and those that follow him, even if they sincerely are deceived, friends, are going to end up burned to ashes on the surface of this earth. Look with me in the book of Malachi, in the last chapter, chapter 4. And there's a description of what will happen at the end of this world's history. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves in the stall, and ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord. There is no future in following Lucifer. Today, and I say that, you know, if I was just talking to Christians, they would say, well, of course I believe that. Why are you presenting this? Because today, Lucifer is a beloved leader among the largest group of religious believers in the world. The worship of Lucifer is witchcraft. And that's the fastest growing movement in the world today. There are many today that are holding the hands of another god who are going to wake up in terror one day. Now you remember the story of Lucifer in the Bible, how he fell from heaven. God announced that he was now the adversary. That's the word Satan. And coming into the Garden of Eden, he took the form of a serpent, or a dragon, a winged serpent. And there, through that medium, he deceived Eve into eating the fruit of the tree, bringing about the woe and misery into the world of man. But the one thing that's interesting about that is what the serpent said. It said that ye shall not surely die. The teaching of the immortality of the soul has transcended every religious institution. There is very, very few in this world today that believes that when you die, you go to sleep. But this is the number one doctrine that is being used by Satan today to deceive the world. If you would turn with me to the book of Psalms. That'll be Psalms chapter 115. We'll read about what happens to a man when he dies. Verse 17, the dead praise not the Lord, neither any that go down into silence. You remember the words of Christ when he said Lazarus was asleep? He finally said Lazarus was dead. Take the time to study out the subject of the dead in the Bible. It's the one subject that Satan does not want the Christian world to understand. And what's happening to our world today, I just want to show you a few things in the time that we have here. The first thing I want to show you is from a book written by a Protestant Christian called Unholy Spirits. In this book, he makes an amazing observation of history. He says this: occultism surfaces as a cultural phenomenon at the end of civilization. And we're experiencing the greatest occult revolution that the world has ever seen in recorded history. He said the consistent occultism of the late Roman Empire overwhelmed the rational, confident aspects of older classical civilization and weakened it sufficiently so that only the Christian had sufficient authority and self-confidence to take over and rebuild its faltering institution. Occultism came at the end of the medieval world, not during it, contrary to popular opinion. It has now come at the end of the enlightenment of humanism, at the end of civilization. The evidence that we have to share you that our world around us, and especially the United States, is saturated with the worship of Lucifer, is an indication that we have come to an end of civilization and to an end of the history of the world. I'll give you one example, and not necessarily from someone who's a Christian who's just looking at these things, trying to find little things to prove his point. But this book, called The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, one of the leading authors, writers, and historians in the area of occult theology, witchcraft, and masonry. He makes a statement that is quoted by Dave Hunt in the book, The Seduction of Christianity, and I'd like to read that to you. He says here, There is abundant evidence that in many forms of modern thought, especially the so-called prosperity psychology, willpower building, metaphysics, and systems of high-pressure salesmanship, that black magic has merely passed through a metamorphosis, and although its name may be changed, its nature remains the same. Modern thought today, modern psychology, human potential, the imagery, and all of these seminars that are going on mind sciences are a revival of theurgy, which was the art of controlling the world around you by your own imagination. It was called black magic, and it's taking the world today. These things should shock us and amaze us, and we should begin to research and study out where we're at individually in our relationship to the world to see if we're being deceived by these things. If you look at the slide, you see a picture of Lucifer. So beautiful and so loved by the angels that they actually believe that when he said that he should become a god, they believed that he should. That he should have that opportunity. And when he tried to take the throne of God by force, a third of the angels entered in with him. These beings of tremendous intelligence, with tremendous minds, were able to be deceived by him. What chance do we have if we don't draw close to God? Now, the image of the serpent was used in Eden, and we can see that it has been used in every major pagan culture throughout the world ever since. Look at this quotation from a Mason, one of the leading Masons, a man by the name of Pearson. It says that all the mysteries throughout the world were the same in substance, being derived from one source and celebrated in honor of the same deities, though acknowledged under different appellations, is further evidenced from the fact that they are traced to the plains of Shinar before the dispersion of mankind. As we go to the plains of Shinar, we find that the head god of the pantheon of Babylonian deities, the head demon, the word demon meant the spirit of the dead. It didn't mean a fallen angel in the original terminology. It meant worshiping the dead. The head demon was Enlil, the Lord of demons, the serpent god that waits in the path to destroy mankind. You see, the Babylonians did not believe you have to worship a good god, but you must worship the destroyer to placate him. The entire system of Luciferian worship, the Luciferian conspiracy, originated around a fear religion, a fear of death. In the Babylonian text, the 7 planets are compared to an enormous serpent with 7 heads, 7 serpents rising out of the sea. No accident here. The serpent can only be traced back to Eden. These 7 gods were said to be the messengers of Enlil, the Lord of demons, or Nergal, the king of Hades, the weapon by which the evil one brought misfortune and disaster and death upon mankind. They worshiped the devil in the form of a serpent. The Greeks pictured Hydra with 7 heads. In Chinese myths, each head of Hydra was said to rule over 7 planets. Giant 7-headed serpents are found in temples in Indochina, and the sun god Buddha is sometimes pictured with 7 heads, or seated on the 7-headed serpent. The Yazidis of Mesopotamia worship Shaitan, the devil, and claim that he had 7 forms. In India, Juggernaut is sometimes pictured as a 7-headed dragon. Krishna and other Hindu deities are all pictured seated on or canopied by 7-headed serpents. And in India, this day, Shiva is worshipped as a 7-headed serpent himself. The Romans had a building called the Septizonium, and the 7 zones. A common title for Rome was Septimonium, or the 7 mountains. The whole concept of the 7-headed dragon, the serpent that rules over everything, can be seen saturating the cultures of this world. The Maya god Ahuachapat, which is translated serpent with 7 heads, was similar to Chikmoto. The Indians of Southern California worshipped a 7-headed serpent. The Pima Indians worshipped the seven-headed serpent. You can go down to Mississippi area and find along the Mississippi River a great 300-foot serpent with the symbol of the cobra and great mounds in the ground and a convolution of 7 convolutions. It was the universal worship of the serpent all the way down through the centuries. I've been to Oslo and walked under the arch of one of those Scandinavian churches of the Vikings, and the entire arch is made up of the carvings of a writhing serpent with wings. And I've seen the Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan of the Mexicans and the Mayans and the Peruvians. And I've been to Egypt, and there, as you go into Hatshepsut's temple tomb, you'll find 2 great serpents on either side with wings, and their bodies convolute all the way up to the inner sanctuary. And you can go to Chichen Itza today, and there you can see the temple with the serpents going all the way up to the temple up above, which represents heaven. Everywhere you go, especially Egypt, where the serpent represents the soul, and the serpent represents the deities of heaven, everything is represented by that serpent. It's the most amazing thing, that this entire world is saturated with the belief in the ancient serpent god. Lucifer, that old devil, the serpent, the dragon, knows that the best way that he can destroy mankind is over the issue of death. He lied to man in Eden that he could live forever, and now men look at death with the hope of life afterwards. Now, every one of us is going to face that grave someday. All the way through the centuries, when men lost contact with their loved ones, the wail of suffering has gone up. This is the greatest motivation in the heart of man. And then when each one of us look in the mirror and we see the wrinkles forming and we see the gray hairs forming, we know that we're dying while we're alive. Our bodies are dying. Every one of us face the grave. All the way through the centuries then, leaders, intelligent men, researchers have tried to delve into the mysteries beyond the grave and understand something of what happens there. They've tried to make contact with spirits beyond the grave, anything to find out where they could get a hold of the power. And so when you go into ancient pagan cult worship that revolves around the sun god, it all revolves around the worship of this life-giving energy that somehow man would somehow have the ability to contact God and get this power. The picture on the screen right now is the Egyptian god of the dead, Serapis. And notice that although he's the god of the dead, and these people used to eat little white circular cakes that were dedicated to this god in the belief that somehow they could get that god's power inside of them to give them more life. Look at the top of his head. He has a hat, and on it is a little branch that's budding. So the god of the dead, the destroyer, the one who's in charge of the grave, is also worshipped in the pagan world as the life giver. The whole concept of makeup was the idea that the spirits of the dead would come back to a priest, a shaman, or a witch doctor. And the witch doctor would direct the people to paint themselves up to look like this spirit in order to pay homage to it, to gain power from it. Now this picture here, a symbol of a copy of some of the ornaments that were used in Babylon, indicates the idea that these people would make three-dimensional images of the gods of the heavens in order to placate them or gain their power in sympathetic magic for the purpose of life, for the purpose of escaping suffering and sickness. Now, if you look at this picture here, this is offering the children to the god Moloch in the land of Canaan. Here, this image the hands would be heated up red hot, and they would lay the living babies on it, and they would play loud music to hide the screams so the parents wouldn't feel as bad. But the thing was, they were hoping that the energy released at the death of this baby would release forces that would guarantee fertility and guarantee blessings from God. So this dragon god is a symbol of the devil, who in every age has been looked to as the life giver, the serpent god. In the Roman Church, they have duplicated the universal idea of receiving life through eating the wafer. That wafer is in the shape of the sun god, the symbol of the life-giving power of the serpent god. Because the Roman Church grew to such tremendous power during the Middle Ages, so much of the research had to be done in the mysteries by the secret societies. In some of the old castles, men who worshiped the ancient Kabbalic rites of the Jews worshiped them secretly for fear of persecution. And other men that delved into other areas of witchcraft and communication with the dead had to do it secretly or they would be persecuted. For at that time, the Roman Church taught that communication with the dead was her area alone. And even to this day, she believes that instantaneous contact with the dead is to be in the veil of the Roman Church. So the real history of the occult during the centuries of the Middle Ages can be found primarily and only in the secret societies. Some of these societies would kiss a symbol of a goat god or the devil and would be initiated into the belief of the immortality of the soul and contact with the dead. Terrible oaths were accepted to keep the people from revealing what they were learning in these secret societies. In Masonry, which today is one of the most prominent of these secret societies, they utilize the Bible and make it appear to the initiate that this is a Christian religion or a Jewish religion. But when one gets into it, take, for instance, the teaching that it originated in Solomon's temple. They find out very soon that what the Masons are referring to here is that this temple is the temple of soul man, or the sun god, the life giver. The worship is the same as that of ancient Babylon. On the wall you see this five-pointed star. It's an indication from their own writings that they take their initiation before a symbol of Satan. The symbols here on these Masonic staffs show that they worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. No matter where you're initiated, whether up the right side of these stairs or the left side, whether you come from the Jews, the Arabic line of Masonry, or whether you come from the Protestant line, no matter what, you'll be initiated into the mysteries of nature. When these people in the secret societies, whether Rosicrucian, whether Masonic, whether Jewish Kabbalistic rites, when they say our Father, that God is not the true God. They're holding the hand of a false God. And their Father is not the Father in the Bible, but it is that old dragon, the serpent, and Satan.